Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Paul.
Can I have a loan? Is that something that you think you can give me like a zero payment? I don't want any interest either, by the way.
Yeah, and first, Paul, I want to say when we're talking about the loan stuff, it's not that people think that when you get in the legislature and you're a public person, you're out there and everything you do, and sometimes I equate it to getting arrested. Everything you do and say can and will be used against you. But I've been on hard times in my life. Could be there again tomorrow. When it's not that we're mocking people on hard times. So when we're talking about the loan part, what we're talking about is the hypocrisy of these people. I mean, you sit here and you look at it, and I keep telling people, well, I go to the bank, but when I said earlier about legislators, it's like real life doesn't insulate you, or being elected doesn't insulate you from real life problems and issues and mistakes and screw-ups and bad judgments once you're in the legislature, but you're a public person, and all those things can be a pinata when those things happen to you the same way it can happen to you in real life. But the difference is the hypocrisy of these people. And I sit there and tell people now, I said, I just have operated in real life the same way I do down there in the legislature, in that when I need money, I go to the bank, okay? And if you're down there to the point that you're having to borrow money off friends and things like that, you don't need to be down there managing a $25 billion budget. And yet these people just continue to just say, and the media, they come out with enough that just throws a tidbit at that shows that, hey, we're trying to do something, but they're not digging. And that's why we've got the problem that we are. And these little stories are they're just minor things that's blowing up over the surface. And you sit there and think, I didn't know, or you could, we knew it was going on. It's been talked about. This news story wasn't anything new. They just finally had to report on something to actually make it seem like they had to do something. This has been going on for a while. But, Paul, here's the thing. Okay. I got a confession.
Okay.
All right, I got a confession. We sit here at the farm or in business, and you buy something and you think, no interest loan. No, probably this, well, we know it's built in and all that, but it makes us feel better. So when this actually broke out, I thought, how do I get one of these? Now, this is very key that all three important parts are to this, because that's the way somehow these people have operated. I can't believe they have, but, I'm a cynic. Okay, it's a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan. Okay, it's all three things. So I thought, so when I saw Jim Hendren the other day, I asked him, I said, hey, Jim, you got any money you can loan? And unfortunately, I was told no. Okay, so
Wow.
I did not. I'm just going to confess to the people out there that, hey, I got weak, okay, and I thought, man, who doesn't want a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan? To me, that's like that trifecta of loans. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah. It certainly is. And I just can't imagine why Senator Hendren thought that Jake Files was good enough to get that zero payment, zero interest, no obligation loan, but the great Senator Brian King wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know about great, but no, I was not. And think about this. At that point in time, this is why the media didn't do anything, and that the media will still never cover any of my Medicaid disclosure bills that I was saying something years ago. They won't. They just sit back and just don't. How many times did Roby Brock have Jeremy Hutchison on his show? Mm-hmm. Name one time he ever asked him any tough questions about what was going on, about what we knew has been going on for years down there.
Yeah,
okay? Nothing.
And there isn't anything. Yeah.
No, there's nothing, and they're just barely dig. But so Jim Hendren loans $4,000.
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's, at this point, folks, I mean, it really was like an entire week's worth of news since the Friday. Since last Friday morning when I got off the air at 8 o'clock, 8 in the morning, you had just an incredible day Friday with the floor speech from the senator from Maine, Susan Collins. We're going to talk. We got a lot to get to this morning. I mean, it's amazing. You know, the reaction from the left here, the clawing at the doors. The chamber of the Supreme Court where Brett Kavanaugh was being sworn in. By the way, if you've been living under a rock for the last couple of days, Brett Court is now an associate justice on the Supreme Court of the United States. He will begin hearing cases this week, as they have several cases. This is their, what's it called? Their term, if you will, where they're going to start hearing cases. Folks, if you're just joining us, you found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine, and we want you to help us do that. You can call or text 870-275-9799. Also sound off over at the Facebook page or YouTube page. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. Or, get the YouTube is, I would really strongly encourage the YouTube. Okay, so where do you guys want to start here? I mean, what a wild ride, right? It's an absolute roller coaster. I mean, you go for 2 weeks, this country was essentially trying to decide whether or not we were going to uphold a common principle that is certainly in our criminal and civil proceedings, but also when it comes to leveling accusations really at any level, whether it's your job, whether it is, literally anywhere in society. If somebody levels an accusation at you, you are presumed innocent until there is proof or evidence to the contrary. And that is what was upheld here. That's the main thing that was upheld here when it comes to the Brett Kavanaugh situation. And, you'll notice the Democrats, they had these constant evolving talking points. All right? The Republican talking points were essentially the same, which is, okay, do we have anybody that can corroborate what the accusation here is? No. But the Democrats, their whole tactic, it was constantly evolving, right? It was first, you have to believe survivors. Okay, well, the other side's saying, well, we're trying to determine if she is a survivor, number one, and if she's a survivor, is it this guy who did it? Okay, that's all we're trying to figure. No, you have to believe survivor. She said it happened. She said it's him. It's the truth. Then when her story was falling apart because there were even the media had to at some point be like, okay, it's not corroborated. They really had to say this when President Donald Trump went out and, quote, mocked. Remember the headlines? He mocked her. No, he was just saying she can't remember how she got there, how she got home. She couldn't remember any of that stuff. So then the Democrat talking points shift. Well, we got to have an FBI investigation. So it shifts, and we got to have, and then of course they get the FBI investigation. Well, it's not a legitimate FBI investigation, right? And then people started wondering, did Blasey Ford perjure herself when she said she's never coached anyone through a polygraph test? And then of course we find out that there's another guy that says, oh yeah, I dated her. She was a polygraph coach. And she helped people get into the FBI and the DOJ. Well, then what happened? Well, then the left just starts saying, Brett Kavanaugh perjured himself because he said he never got blackout drunk. And there's other people that say otherwise, that, yes, he did get blackout drunk. By the way, let's can we understand the phrase blackout drunk? I mean, is it possible someone gets blackout drunk and doesn't remember that they got blackout drunk? I mean, we're talking about memory loss here. I mean, I just think that's hilarious. Okay, because this is, I mean, I was watching the Saturday Night Live because I was like, okay, they're going to be in meltdown mode, right? The Saturday Night Live people, these leftists who, kind of masquerade as comedians at this point. And I'm like, and of course they're saying, well, this man was just confirmed to the Supreme Court and he perjured himself. And I'm like, wow, that's projection and deflection because Christine Blasey Ford actually perjured herself.
To my own recollection, I've never been blackout drunk before, but I'm pretty sure only the person who is the drinker can actually tell you if they've been blackout drunk or not.
That's a good point.
Like, because I can't tell if someone's blackout drunk or not.
It is, yeah, exactly. Exactly. He was really drunk, and I'm sure he didn't remember anything the next day. How do you know that? You got to be inside about it. And so that's all that they have, They say, his testimony. So then they shift and they shift again, and they say, he was a little too passionate in defending himself, and in doing so, he showed that he's too partisan for the bench. No. Actually, what it showed was he's a human being. His character's under attack. He's a human being. He responded the way anybody should respond, regardless of what job you're interviewing for. Man, and okay. So then you can talk about this. Who's excited to go vote and make sure that these Democrats don't take over the House? Me, I am. I'm excited to go vote. How about you? The rest of the country? I mean, it is showing, the polls right now are showing that now voter enthusiasm is essentially tied between the two parties. That wasn't the case. I think this is going to be some people are using the phrase, it's going to be a red tsunami. I don't know about that. I'm not 100% convinced of that, but I just think, listen, they said Hillary Clinton was ahead in the polls, right? I mean, and the polls were all wrong. And what has the media shown you anything? Have the polling community, have they showed you anything that believes that they respect the will of the people or are going to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, we got 2016 really wrong. I wonder how come. No, because it's all agenda driven. They don't care that they got it wrong. They're the propaganda arm now of the deep state, of the status quo. That's what the corporate mainstream media is. They are a propaganda arm. And, they're like, well, we got to double down on this. Yep, it was kind of an anomaly, a glitch in the system. We don't have control of the people's minds the way we thought in 2016, but we're gonna double down, and they can't evolve, if you will. You have Mr. Nolte over at Breitbart News, John Nolte. He's compiled a list of the winners and losers of this whole fiasco over the last 2 weeks. The first winner, and we just mentioned this, is the rule of law, he says. As Senator Lindsey Graham told Sean Hannity, we were at the edge of an abyss where smears and the dark art of character assassination were about to become legitimized. Yes, I'm a bit uneasy that we came so close to going over that abyss, and even more anxious over the fact that not a single Democrat or member of the establishment media had the moral courage to be the Joseph Welch of our time, to point to their own and ask, have you no sense of decency? But for now, we have a reprieve and maybe even a little of hope that the hangover from this crushing loss might awaken the conscience of just one Democrat or just one adult in the media. Who else is a winner? Nolte says that Associate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh is a winner as well. President Donald Trump comes out as a winner in this. Did anybody see the rally in Topeka, Kansas on Saturday night? That was fantastic to watch. Simply put, he writes, with this, his second Supreme Court justice, Trump has secured his presidential legacy. The dream of a 5-4 conservative court is as old as I am, and only Trump could have ensured this because Trump is the only Republican president who would have ever had the courage to not sacrifice Kavanaugh in the hopes of getting someone else approved before the midterm elections. President Trump showed enormous character where no one else would have. Let me repeat the word character. Let me also say, do not buy the liberal narrative that before Justice Kavanaugh, people like Sandra Day O'Connor and Justice Kennedy. They were the swing vote, and they preserved the neutrality of the court. They preserved the partisanship of the court because, you know, you would have a swing vote. You have to convince O'Connor, and you have to convince Kennedy, and it was more neutral. Please do not buy that. That is absolute nonsense. The court is liberal, right? The court has these 5-4 decisions. That's what's been going on for a long time that are advancing the progressive agenda, okay? That's what it is. It's advancing the progressive agenda. They can't win legislative victories for the most part because they can't be honest with you about what they really believe, so they have to have the courts reinterpret so that they can give government more authority. And that's what those 5-4 decisions are, okay? And so the idea that it's been somehow neutral, no, it's been left-leaning, and now it's going to be right-leaning. We hope. We have no guarantees of this. We hope it's going to be right-leaning now. But make no mistake about it, it has been a left-leaning court in a lot of instances where it counts. Let's see. Then we have Susan Collins is a winner, according to John Nolte. As agonizing as the suspense of the last 72 hours were, he writes, Senate Republicans planned it to perfection. Put all eyes on Susan Collins, put all the media attention on Susan Collins, and then have this moderate, pro-choice, anti-Trump woman use the national spotlight to deliver a devastating closing argument in favor of Kavanaugh's confirmation. It was a brilliant political move, and she was brilliant and serious and informed and above all American. Yeah, there were parts of Susan Collins' speech I was like, you know, she was painting Kavanaugh as really a moderate and everything else, and I was like, well, I hope she's wrong. But at the same time, you know who she brought up? She brought up the porn lawyer, Michael Avenatti. And the second accusation, this Julie Swetnick and the gang rape and the putting Quaaludes and everything else. And, of course, you know, that was right on the same week that Bill Cosby was being sentenced for what? Using Quaaludes. I thought that was just a little too convenient, you know. It gave the left the opportunity to you know, basically say, you know, a black man goes to jail and a white man gets a seat on the Supreme Court. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they actually used that in some, you know, context. Which we did predict. So, you know, the Susan Collins speech was great. And, you know, she cited that. It's just baseless accusations. That this is baseless accusations. And she's like, yeah, I believe Christine Blasey Ford, but I don't believe it was Brett Kavanaugh that did it. And, you know, it was this idea of the presumption of innocence. I mean, that's what she talked about. It was great. And it was a woman. And that was the other thing. A woman decides. Of course, the left is in meltdown mode. Susan Collins, you've betrayed women. People saying things like, you should never have a moment of peace again in your life in public. Who else was a winner? Nolte says that Senator Lindsey Graham was a winner as well. I agree. I mean, I'm telling you, I have been not a fan of Lindsey Graham. I haven't been a fan of Mitch McConnell. I mean, my goodness. But they went to the mat here. And I'm telling you, that's because something has happened in D.C. Call it the draining of the swamp. But because of Donald Trump, rhinos like Mitch McConnell and like Lindsey Graham, and I say that word, you know, I'm just using that word because isn't that what we've been calling them? Haven't we been calling Mitch McConnell a rhino, a Republican in name only? Haven't you called Lindsey Graham a rhino 1,000 times, right? But I'm telling you, because of the strong leadership of President Donald Trump in the executive and the swamp that is being drained, a lot of the stuff that's being exposed, there has something that has happened where these men, these Republican leaders, they feel more emboldened. It's like they are freer to actually govern based on what they campaigned on. And that's my analysis. It's just a suspicion. I mean, it's isn't it peculiar that Mitch McConnell kind of took the Trump route here? Now he didn't, he didn't do it in the style that Trump does it. But if this happened under any other Republican president, the Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, I think, would have been dancing to the beat that the media demanded them to dance to. Well, Trump has now set a precedent where you don't have to, because he's onto something, that the mainstream media does not represent popular American thought. Let me say that again. The mainstream media in this country does not represent popular American thought. Not anymore. And Donald Trump knows it. And you know who else has figured it out? Seems like some in the Republican establishment have figured that out as well. How else do you explain it? How else do you explain Mitch McConnell willing to go to the mat? Lindsey Graham saying what he said. Now, Lindsey Graham had a lot of room to do this because he voted for Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. And so that's really what made him mad. But yeah, there are winners here. Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, even Jeff Flake. Say what you want to about him, but I look, yeah, Jeff Snowflake, right? But apparently the extra week that Jeff Flake saying we need an FBI investigation, it just gave the Democrats more rope to hang themselves with. These people are falling into their own nets, and I'll tell you how here in just a minute. Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley comes out a winner. The Republican Party comes out a winner here. The Federalist Society, Rachel Mitchell, the Maricopa County sex prosecutor, was widely criticized for her cross-examination of Dr. Ford. Did anybody listen to Chuck Schumer's speech right before the confirmation? It made me sick. He cited this as a negative thing, that they got a woman. And if they hadn't gotten a woman sex crimes investigator, you know what Chuck Schumer would have said? He'd have said, all these white men who are Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee questioning Dr. Blasey Ford, because no, they do exactly what they in a way they basically use the system, use the media's drum against themselves, trying to be above reproach here. Say, well, you know what, we'll get a woman who's sensitive to these things, who's been a sex crimes investigator, who has seen women and has prosecuted rapists. Let's see. Then John Nolte goes on to say Breitbart News and the new media are winners here. But who are the losers? Now, this is the list that is fascinating to me. The losers of this 2-week fiasco, the organized left, no doubt. The organized left are the losers. The Democrats, the establishment media, CNN, NBC, NPR, the Washington Posts. Let's see here. Michael Avenatti. He is a big loser here, and I'll tell you why. Lisa Murkowski, the only Republican senator to vote against Kavanaugh, made up her mind while walking in to vote on cloture, and her only explanation was he's not the right man for the court. You can do better, Alaska, John Nolte writes. Yeah, that's true. But here's another thing. You know who another loser is, according to Breitbart News, is John Nolte? I thought this was interesting. Fox News was a loser in this. The opinion lineup was fine. So your Laura Ingrams, your Sean Hannitys, et cetera, et cetera. But he writes, it was the news part of Fox News that disgraced itself with a litany of fake news about Dr. Ford being credible. It's not about the politics or even the fate of the Supreme Court, he wrote. The fate of a man was on the line, a whole man, and Fox News, of all places, threw him to the wolves by declaring, without a shred of evidence, without hearing his side, that the sexual assault allegations against him were credible. That's as un-American as it gets, and he writes, Fox News is dead to me. Other losers, Never Trump Dead Enders, Cory Booker, the Me Too movement, the Matriarchy, Hollywood, Alyssa Milano, Who's the Boss Now, Cupcake? He writes, we're going to take a break. This story, John Nolte up at Breitbart.com. We've got more analysis of this. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be talking with Brian Maloney from the Media Equalizer Project about this whole situation, kind of giving a recap of what happened here. Folks, don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News. Good morning. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality.
To Jake Files out of friendship. At the time, I think Jake was living in a $1.5 million home with pools and tennis courts, and flying a plane back and forth to Little Rock, and driving like an $80,000, $90,000 rig. Now, I don't know about you, but, and you know, hey, we like to think of ourselves as maybe at the worst being degrading cynics. Jim Hendren thinks of you as Al-Qaeda or ISIS, okay? And probably me too. But that's obvious. Maybe because I have terrorist affiliations is the reason Jim Hendren wouldn't give me a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan like he's done other people. I don't know. But it just amazes me how they give these answers, and, you know, I just don't see how they just sit there and go on and act like they're for transparency. And
do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you.
Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Yeah, some people skeptical about the motivations of Republican establishment figures like Mitch McConnell and like Lindsey Graham on the Facebook page over at facebook.com/Conduit News. Gene writes, what happened to McConnell and Lucy Graham is their own survival. We have Tim writing about, a lot of times rhinos are less about Republican principles and more about their own political survival. That's true. I don't care, though. I mean, obviously, in an ideal situation, you want somebody committed to principles. Who's responsible for getting, people who have been in the swamp, right, to stand up for their own political survival based on a popular opinion? Who's responsible for that? Well, it's President Trump. It's strong leadership. That's all I'm saying. It's him demonstrating that the people are on his side if you speak the truth. Now, people are like, well, I got a big problem with how he speaks it. Now, I mean, it is what it is. And I've said this before, my whole thing about Donald Trump is, and this is, in a lot of ways, is why the establishment of both parties rejects him, is because he's so real and honest and open about, the way he feels about things, and he doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't necessarily polish it. You know what I'm saying? I think that's how a lot of these guys are behind closed doors. And Donald Trump represents no. I mean, we're trying to govern the country. Here it is, warts and all. We're not going to try to lie to you anymore. We're not going to mask this idea of decency when, in fact, so many of our politicians are themselves indecent. I mean, you tell me what you think about that. Back in a minute.
Or for open, honest government, Jim Hendren has not been for that. He's actually fought it, but you will never see a news story about it, and Doug Thompson and the media will write love stories about him and Asa Bart Hester.
Yeah, and it's odd that the mainstream media is doing that when, technically these people, they're Republicans, and it's really, really interesting how there is this status quo, basically, circle the wagon support for those who are in positions of power, maintaining the status quo, and you kind of got to wonder, what's really going on behind the scenes. Did you see this story over at the Arkansas Neighbors Project, where Mark Moore, exposes this in this Noble plea, I guess. Yeah,
I commented in it.
Yeah. That's right. He asked you for a comment. So you have Preferred Family Healthcare owning this nice house in Florida and this nice 5,000 plus square foot lake house in Eureka Springs. I mean, that's in Carroll County. That's in your district. And the question is, what legislators, have stayed here? You say you haven't ever stayed at this place.
No, didn't know. I mean, my dad was telling me that he thought that kind of in a Geraldism wisdom deal, he said, well, at least they stole the money, but they spent some of it back here in Carroll County, I guess, if you wanted to try and find a positive out of it. But, yeah, I mean, where is that? Where is it? It has come out in court documents that possibly a lobbyist paid for John Woods' wedding reception. No digging on that. But, God, if I take a trip, remember a few years ago when I took a trip, and I disclosed it to the Foundation of Government Accountability, which I was a speaker down there at a conference. My gosh, I think there was no less than half a dozen op-eds and news stories. There was at least 6 to 10 news stories out there about how I took that. Brummett wrote about it 2 or 3 times. I mean, man, they went crazy over it, and that's fine. I mean, when I took it, I think, well, I might as well be ready to, face the music, and I did. And you know what? Where is any? You have a court document that comes out that outlines this stuff, and nothing. No digging, no asking questions. I mean, I thought that I was going to have to move to a cave in Bolivia to get away from answering questions about a trip that I reported that was okayed by the Ethics Commission well in advance of when I did it.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. Disclose. I mean, how many legislators, and come on, this is Arkansas. We know the level of corrupt.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The phone number is 870-275-9799. To give you a little, I use this phrase a lot, okay? If you've been listening to the program, especially when we talk about these national events, from my perspective, I have watched President Donald Trump do everything the wrong way according to conventional thought, according to the way a politician is supposed to behave, according to the good feelings they're supposed to give these speeches and make you feel all safe and secure, or the president is says exactly what's on his mind just the way it is, and the people, what do they do? They appreciate that because I think they understand, they can at least recognize, hey, this guy's being honest with us. This is how he really feels, versus a politician who keeps those honest feelings in a box. So, I have noticed that in the efforts to take President Trump out, to stop his agenda, to stonewall things, there are obviously his detractors in the media as well in politics, and they will lay these nets for him. They will put these nets out, whether it's Russia, whether it is, let's just say what happened with trying to torpedo the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. Whatever, they lay out these nets, and from my observation, foreign policy, Trump's going to get us into a war. Oh, my gosh, he just sat down with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. They fall into their own nets. There's probably no better example of this in the last 2 weeks than Michael Avenatti. The Democrat Party's even turning on Michael Avenatti. This story from Zero Hedge. Following Friday's announcement by Senator Susan Collins that she would vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, the left flipped on one of its recent heroes, Michael Avenatti. In a fiery speech announcing her decision, Collins ripped unsupported claims by Avenatti's client, Julie Swetnick, that Kavanaugh facilitated a Cosby-esque gang rape operation while in high school. She said some of the allegations levied against Judge Kavanaugh illustrate why the presumption of innocence is so important. I'm thinking in particular not of the allegations raised by Professor Ford, but of the allegations that when he was a teenager, Judge Kavanaugh drugged multiple girls and used their weakened state to facilitate gang rape. This outlandish allegation, she said, put forth without any credible supporting evidence and simply parroted public statements of others. That such an allegation can find its way into the Supreme Court confirmation process is a stark reminder about why the presumption of innocence is so ingrained in our American consciousness, Susan Collins. That's probably the best statement that she made of the whole thing, and you can tell that these other allegations certainly weighed on her and might have been the tipping point, which led Greg Gutfeld to say Avenatti may be a Republican operative because no one could pull off this self-sabotage unless it was deliberate. Self-sabotage? You mean like falling into your own nets? While Christine Blasey Ford's groping allegation may have been believable and enough to derail the nomination, subsequent claims against Kavanaugh likely derailed what little legitimacy Ford had. Now, let's just stop right there for a second before we go any further with this. Why were there other allegations made? Because Blasey Ford's allegations were falling to pieces. You can say she was believable or not, but we had these other allegations before she ever testified. Remember this. We had other allegations from other women before Christine Blasey Ford ever testified. But what was starting to get out with Christine Blasey Ford? That she couldn't remember details. It was starting to get out that none of the people she named at this party could corroborate what happened that day. The woman that was her friend said she doesn't even know who Brett Kavanaugh is. That was starting to get out. So guess what? Boom, we need Michael Avenatti, spring in action, throw some nets out there. Boom, we got Julie Swetnick. And honestly, at this point, to believe to try to assume that this wasn't planned like this, then you have to pretend that you're, you essentially have to pretend you go along, and that's a moronic thing to do. We're not morons here. You have some guy named Robin Sove. He says Collins called the Swetnick allegation outlandish, and Kennedy said this process changed dramatically when Mr. Avenatti entered the picture. Michael Avenatti provided cover for Republicans to confirm Kavanaugh. Nice work, dude. So the left here is upset at Michael Avenatti with the second woman. What they don't understand is the second woman was necessary to give the media more information and ignore the crumbling testimony, the crumbling facts surrounding Christine Blasey Ford's allegations. Another person on Twitter, this is why Democrats did not want Michael Avenatti to get involved in this fight. Collins is specifically citing Swetnick's gang rape accusation as something that made her think she needed to give Kavanaugh the benefit of the doubt. We now have people on the left saying, yeah, the Swetnick thing was a little too much. Didn't really ever believe that one. Well, this is your side. This is your side doing this because they believe the ends justify the means. Britt Hume, a never Trump guy. I wonder if this Swetnick fiasco will have the same effect on Michael Avenatti that the Roy Moore disaster did on Steve Bannon. The initial allegations... Hang on. Why can't I ever... this one... is that the Byron York thing up there on your screen? I don't know why. I don't know why I don't have it. Hard to state how much Avenatti's entrance into this process hurt Democratic efforts to bring down Kavanaugh. Another tweet. Avenatti responded. Can you go into Avenatti's response? You are right. I should have turned my back on my client, told her to shut up and stay quiet because people like you apparently believe assault victims are to blame. This line of thinking is disgusting and offensive to all survivors, and it makes lawyers not want to help them. Let's see. There's an update here. CNN reports Senate Democrats are also jumping on the anti-Avenatti bandwagon. A host of Democratic senators and senior aides told CNN that the allegations from Avenatti's client gave the GOP an opening to conflate and dismiss all the allegations in one broad brush. Anyway, this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the poster child for somebody who's, sets out these nets and then that you fall into them. And now the media is obviously going after Michael Avenatti. Michael Avenatti was just being a good soldier. He was just being a good soldier, that's all. And here we are. Brett Kavanaugh is the 9th Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. What other fallout do we have from this situation? Well, I think the culture is shifting, and I think it's to the point because of new media and also alternative means of entertainment that things are getting out that aren't supposed to get out. We are in the process right now, folks, of breaking the hold that the mainstream media has over a lot of people. Now, not everybody, but I don't know if anybody watches UFC. Ultimate Fighting, is it the Ultimate Fighter Championship? That's what it stands for, right? Clearly I watch, right? I watch the knockouts and stuff, if there's something that comes up on my YouTube channel, like, it's like a vicious one-punch thing, and it's interesting to me. So there was a big Vegas event. It was like the 229th UFC, the Ultimate Fighter Championship. They've got different weights, just like just like in boxing and everything else. Well, there was one guy that won, and in his post-game interview with Joe Rogan of the Joe Rogan podcast, but he's also in the UFC industry. Joe Rogan is interviewing this guy. Scroll down here. I want to get this video. I want the people to listen to this video because you've got to listen to it. It's up there. It's right there. So here it is. This is who won the fight here. This is Nick Lentz. So a guy by the name of Nick Lentz won his fight, was interviewed at UFC 229, and this is what he said to everybody out there watching and listening.
The contest call a stop to this contest at 1 minute, 19 seconds of the second round. Declaring the winner by TKO.
Oh, well, looks like we have
Nick the Cardi Man.
Hey, will you hit refresh real quick, just on the whole article, and then re-click it? Sometimes these Twitter videos, this is what they do. They because I had it.
Early contest call a stop to this contest at 1 minute, 19 seconds of the second round. Declaring the winner by TKO, Nick the Cardi Lentz.
No. Then you got Joe Rogan.
All right, I'm here with the winner, Nick Lentz. First of all, Nick, congratulations on a victory over a real veteran in Gray Maynard. And I think this fight really highlighted the improvement and the development of your striking.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to give out a shout out to my homie Brett Kavanaugh. Way to go.
Okay, so, we're having some buffering problems. But anyway, the point is, you heard that.
That's okay.
I want to give I want to give a shout out to my homie Brett Kavanaugh. Now, this is a big deal. I want to give a shout out to my homie Brett Kavanaugh. Way to go, Special K. And so here we have a UFC fighter, Nick Lentz, who is like, is he a veteran? Yeah. So I mean, it's. Joe Rogan here is like, what? I come up and I'm asking technical questions about your fighting skills and your striking and how it's improved, and you just immediately like, hang on, one second. I just want to give a shout out to Brett Kavanaugh. Now the headline on Breitbart yesterday was, is this a cultural shift? Is this how many male voters are watching UFC? I'm just curious. How many people are energized here? You know? And that wasn't, we weren't done. Now, I know you would say, wow, politics in UFC, that's strange. We weren't done here. Over at the Daily Caller. Go to thedailycaller.com. I picked the Daily Caller because the embedded here is the bleeped version, okay? But you had another UFC fighter. His name is Derek Lewis. I've got it queued up right where it's supposed to be. And Derek Lewis is being interviewed after a massive TKO in the last minute of the fight. I mean, and it was a brutal hit. But listen to what he said. He claims the President of the United States called him before his fight. Listen.
And what you just did was absolutely phenomenal. That was an incredible comeback victory, and it shows one of the reasons why people love to watch you fight, that you can put it all to bed with one shot.
I told them boys, I got nothing but heart. You know, they keep underestimating me. I ain't all that technical and all that, but I'm getting there.
No one will question your heart, sir, after this. This is a come-from-behind knockout, the likes that we haven't seen in a long time. And you were looking for that big haymaker all night. You found it in the last minute of the fight.
I forgot, a few hours before the fight, Donald Trump called me and told me I got to knock this Russian out because they're making him look bad on the news. You know, him and Putin.
Stop. Oh, my gosh. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Now, I know there was a lot of beeps there, but here's a guy saying, Donald Trump called me and said, I have to knock this Russian expletive out because they're making him look bad on the news. You cannot make this stuff up. I mean, this is hilarious. It is also, at the same time, it shows, if it's in fact true, that you have the press. Oh, and by the way, it's almost like, he forgot. He said, I forgot. It's almost like, he was told, and by the way, the president was like, by the way, Derek, make sure you tell everybody I called you after you win. Is that not hilarious? Does anyone else think that's not so funny? And this is all because, the Democrat Party was so desperate to stop Brett Kavanaugh that they overplayed their hand to such an extent that now in UFC 2029, when a ton of testosterone, men pumped up on testosterone that may not take too kindly to the concept, by the way, of being falsely accused of something they didn't do, specifically with women. And now you have not one, but two UFC fighters referencing the political events of the day. One, Brett Kavanaugh. I want to give a shout out to my homie Brett Kavanaugh. Way to go, Special K. There were some people clapping and some people booing. And then you have another guy saying, hey, this is a victory essentially for America. I was fighting a Russian. Donald Trump told me I needed to knock him out because they're making him look bad on the news. Again, really what that is, a reference to what? The fake news. But I just tell you, this is, we are living in just incredibly interesting times. And there is a shift that has happened, not just in this election, not just in this upcoming election with voter enthusiasm, although that is happening, and it's happening, I believe, in a big, big, big way. I think people are motivated. But the shift is bigger than that. This is a shift in the way people are thinking. I mean, if you just look at the black voter, okay? The black voter is now shifting. You have, according to one poll, 15% approval rating a year ago. Now that's up to 30%. Folks, do you realize how massive of an electoral shift it would be if 5% of African Americans abandoned the Democrat Party, walked away from just 5%? It would be a huge amount of people. It would be a huge loss for the Democrats. I think it's going to be more than that. I think when the left and the media see the numbers, when they see the numbers after the midterms, they're not going to believe it. They're not going to be able to fathom what has happened. And essentially what's going on is people are rejecting this relentless pursuit of President Trump, his agenda at all costs. I think people are starting to wake up and realize that the media is intentionally deceiving them on so many levels. And we could go down a list, but they are intentionally deceiving on so many levels. I think when we finally figure out what the FBI did to the Trump campaign, I think when we finally find out how many FBI or Department of Justice officials are deliberately leaking stories to the press, getting the press to report them, then using the reports as a reason to get warrants to spy on Americans, folks, it's going to be... there's so much more stuff to come out on this. So much more stuff. You go listen over at conduitnews.com. You can listen to my interview with Devin Nunes, the chair of the House Intel Committee. And he talks about how, yes, we will see the FISA documents. We will see them eventually. Well, we're still waiting, and I hope we see them this week. Now that the Kavanaugh situation is over, now that we're running up to the midterms, I think now is a better time than ever. Now, you will look for a big narrative shift here. The media has lost. The Democrats have lost. You can look for a huge shift sometime this week. A new attack on President Donald Trump is coming. It may be the state of New York looking into his taxes, trashing his, deceased father. It could be more about Russia. Who knows, I understand Mike Pompeo said that the negotiations with the North Koreans are progressing nicely, so look for stories that are going to undermine whatever the administration is saying according to that, because, the anti-war left now really doesn't want peace. They're anti-war, but they really, really, really don't want peace. I saw where Lindsey Graham said that if President Trump were to get a Nobel Peace Prize, he said that leftists everywhere would jump out of buildings, right? Phone number is 870-275-9799 if you want to contribute to the program. Interesting times. That phrase is certainly an understatement. We'll keep you posted. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
How many legislators are not okay with taking cash payments? How many legislators are not attorneys that have stayed at this property? I mean, that's the real question here. Now, they're okay staying somewhere for free, but but the whole point is, have they reported it? And the answer is no, they haven't. And so, yeah, I mean, the media here, the statewide media, they have an absolute goldmine, especially those that have the access to get to some of these people to ask them questions. I mean, they have a gold mine here, a golden opportunity to expose even more corruption. And it's for the most part, it's crickets. I mean, even the loan story, even reporting on the loans, it's almost like they're reporting it because, well, we have to report this one. And I'm wondering if they weren't getting out in front of maybe some disclosures from the FBI or some U.S. attorneys in the coming weeks.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio. with Paul Harrell.
So the Benton County Sheriff's Unit, their narcotics unit, was doing an investigation, and they discovered 55 pounds of marijuana, 4 ounces of mushrooms, 3 ounces of kratom, and 1.5 pounds of hash, 2 guns, and a partridge in a pear tree. That is a lot of marijuana. 55 pounds of marijuana. 3 people have been arrested up in Benton County. It's news out of northwest Arkansas from last week. Coming up at the top of the next hour, we're going to be doing our Conduit quiz that we missed. We're supposed to do it on Friday, and I just completely forgot about it. I even told you we were going to do it, but it's on issue 4 of the casinos. You're certainly going to want to stay tuned for that. Then at the bottom of the next hour, again, Brian Maloney from the Media Equalizer Project, or the Media Equality Project, the website MediaEqualizer.com. I'm just going to talk about Brett Kavanaugh and kind of recap. And I know we've done that a lot this week, or this hour, but I don't think people understand just the gravity of what's going on here. Have you seen this over at the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's website? Leftist protesters freak out, claw at Supreme Court doors while Brett Kavanaugh is sworn in. By the way, I'm still waiting on them to act like violent. I mean, I know the left is already violent, but I'm just saying this is not going to stop here. So it's the second video, Joe, is the one we want. Go ahead and hit play on that and throw that up on the screen for us, as well as let us listen to it, because it's pretty fascinating. Look at this woman. She's trying to claw her way into the Supreme Court. Go ahead and hit play.
Shut it down! 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 Shut it down!
Oh, man. By the way, this is all a performance. I'm telling you, this is a performance. All right, so turn it down a little bit. As you're watching this, okay, if you watch this without any sound, this woman looks kind of like Gandalf trying to find the Doer of Durin at the Mines of Moria. Like, where is this? But then, of course, you just give up and you just start pounding the door, clawing with their. Isn't that such a what a feminist headline? Women claw, she literally is trying to use her fingernails to pry open the doors. How do we get in? This was, by the way, according, it's a pull, not a push. Hey, this, by the way, apparently was going on, according to reports, while Brett Kavanaugh was being sworn in on Saturday. Then, of course, you got the photo of the protester in Lady Justice's lap. And, the nation just kind of shrugs. It's like, whatever. So now the Democrats are saying, the competing narrative is, oh, well, because they confirmed Kavanaugh, we're going to have more voter enthusiasm because they confirmed Kavanaugh. They don't know what they've done. They're going to pay. It's going to be a reckoning. Let's see. You know what? We're not going to know till November 6th, when all the chips are on the table, and then we'll see. We'll see what happens. By the way, a lot of people worried about illegal immigrants potentially voting in some of these California, really all across the country. I want to remind you of something. President Trump, he commissioned a group of people to investigate voter fraud in this country. Now, it has since been disbanded, but I know for a fact that there were findings that came out of that. I know for a fact that there were. And I also know that it would be stupid, dumb, and naive to assume that the fact-finding mission about voter fraud that the media ignores because they claim voter fraud with illegal immigrants is impossible to happen. It would be dumb and naive to assume that the Trump administration has not taken some actions to counter, if you will, some of the things. All I'm saying is, if you're a leftist and you've been illegally voting, I would watch out this time, because I would expect the policing efforts about this to be way up. And guess what? They wouldn't publicize it, would they? They wouldn't tell you about it.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Who knows? I don't know. But, this has all been talked about. There, like I said, file bills. When you start wondering, there's a point in time there when you're down there that you think, is this really going on? I mean, I spent years wondering that and stuff. And then, you just don't want to say anything till after,
Well, let me ask you this,
but,
Brian.
But we've had problem after problem after problem after problem, and yet you have those down there that are in it. You have those that either they're in with them in the inner circle to some level or something like that, and then you have the mass part that basically, some of them may say something every once in a while, but for the most part, they just keep their mouth shut. And
yeah, and here's what I would say to the mainstream media that claims or likes to pretend that they are objective, okay? Giving you the benefit of the doubt for the sake of argument, let's say you're objective. How is it not news to report that the governor backed Republicans who were primarying the two senators whose bills would have exposed exactly what has been going on down there? Your Medicaid disclosure bill would have exposed all of this. Linda Collins-Smith would have prevented attorneys from being able to take money under the table to pass bills for their clients, which is what we're finding out has been going on down there.
Yeah, $500,000 named in Jeremy Hutchinson.
Yeah, named in federal court documents. How is that not a news story, the objective press, when you also have the Republican governor who is running for re-election, and by the way, this is his nephew who has been named as taking the $500,000, and the governor backs two other Republicans in a primary against the two most outspoken people for ethics reform who will not be going back in January? How is that not front page news to try to speak truth to power and to tell everybody in the state what's going on? And yet, there's no story about something like that.
Well, you go even farther than that. What about the Democrat Party and the Democrats down there? You don't hear anything about it. I mean, can you imagine if Donald Trump's nephew got a name from taking $500,000 in a court document? And I mean, it just is the whole world down there. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it where when you speak out like you guys, you get the first thing that they need to do when you're speaking the truth or raise questions. I learned this down there. The biggest defense is they say you're crazy, you're a liar, you're wrong on the facts, even though they'll never back anything up that shows that you're not. They will, say you're a terrorist. So that's the defense that they do, and that's why Jim Hendren does what he does. And he
let me say this: it seems like Jim Hendren has been fighting against Conduit News because I think he knew eventually all this was going to come out, and that he's kind of swept up in this, whether it's the $4,000 to Jake Files or whether it's the fact that he knew John Woods was a scoundrel because John Woods tried to get a bribe from him. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that actually hurts his political credibility in the long run. But we were just exposing, the system, trying to speak truth to power. I mean, I didn't know Jim Hendren had been approached, and asked to offer give John Woods $10,000. I didn't know any of that. But as it starts coming out, it's now, oh wow, the people in charge of this whole system, in the leadership, they knew how bad it was, and they weren't doing anything about it. And only now that they're caught do they want to say, okay, now we'll fix it. Trust us, we'll fix it. Well, there's a serious trust gap there.
Yeah, and, let's even go a little farther here. What about Bart Hester? How many dirty deals does Bart Hester have to be involved in till people go, wait a minute here? I mean, he was involved in the Ecclesia College deal up to his neck and wallered in it. He then turned around and it was part of the John Woods GIF part down there to that sham deal that wound up getting medical equipment back to his dad. And then now he has actually been outed. I mean, it was more of a publicist, let's get this out there before it could get worse type deal as going around, and here's another, I'm going to have another confession in a minute, Paul. Can I have another confession?
Yeah, go ahead.
Confessions in one show. When I was Republican leader, I didn't know it was my...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome back, folks. Hour number 2 here. Thanks so much for being with us. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Happy Monday to everybody out there. Folks, I got to tell you, it's been a crazy weekend. I know we talked about this last hour as well, but the attempt to sabotage President Donald Trump's agenda, at least this time, was thwarted. And, the left's in meltdown mode, and the right is energized. And now is the time, in my opinion, I think now is the time to declassify everything. Declassify the FISA application. Let's see how bad it was. And let's go on from here. But the stakes are high. There's no question.
They're too expensive. Lower the price of steaks.
I will tell you that you have a situation where President Trump's going to be at several rallies in the next couple of weeks, basically rallying the troops. Let me just talk about the rallies for a second. It is true that when President Trump was campaigning in 2016, he was packing venues out. Hillary Clinton could even fill up a high school gymnasium. Donald Trump was packing events out. But back in 2016, Donald Trump was not packing events out with a line 4 people wide, a mile long. That wasn't happening. It's happening now. President Trump, where he goes, is packing arenas full, and there's lines 4 people wide and a mile long trying to just get into the event that don't get in. People that don't get in, that are standing outside. There are entire economies that have been created based on following Trump to rallies. There are people that are selling Make America Great Again merchandise, political merchandise, that just follow Trump from rally to rally and sell to the people in line. It is a cultural phenomenon that the mainstream media must ignore. Must ignore. And even with them ignoring it, this is still happening. What does that tell you about the hold they no longer have on us? It's just amazing times. We go from, in 1 week's time, we go from an FBI investigation, we got to extend it to a week, to Kanye West on Saturday Night Live saying on Saturday Night Live in front of everybody that the welfare system was a Democratic plot to keep black people enslaved and destroy their families, to Brett Kavanaugh being confirmed after an amazing speech that was rational and logical by Susan Collins, a woman, a moderate, that goes against everything, to later that night, 2 UFC fighters, one of them saying, "Congratulations, Kavanaugh," after he won his fight, and another one saying, "Donald Trump called me and told me I had to knock this Russian expletive out because they're making him look bad on the news." It has been culturally as well as politically, with all of these rallies, an incredible 2 weeks. historic in a lot of ways. The phone number is 870-275-9799. Folks, we missed it last week, but we're starting the week off right. It's makeup quiz time. That's right. We're going to make up the Conduit for Action quiz, the Conduit quiz. It's up at conduitnews.com right now. This week, we have issue number 4 to add 2 new casinos in Arkansas and expand gaming at current casinos. That's what issue 4 is, a constitutional amendment. The measure would allow 2 new casinos in Arkansas, in Pope County near Russellville, and in Jefferson County near Pine Bluff. It would allow expanded gambling at Oaklawn and Hot Springs and Southland and West Memphis. Issue 4 would tax casino proceeds 13% on the first $150 million, 20% tax on $150 million and above. We're going to make Joe, our board operator, take this quiz right now. Hello, Joe. How are you? You ready to do this?
I guess I'm ready to do this.
Okay, let's see. Issue number 4 going to be on your ballot this November, Arkansas. Question number 1. In what Arkansas counties would issue 4 allow new casinos? Which one? Whatever you do, just you can't go back and read what was just said. But go ahead, give it a little, think it out a little bit. What do we got?
Can.
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right. Is it Pope and Pulaski, Washington and Benton, or Pope and Jefferson?
Oh man, gonna be honest, I wasn't paying attention.
That's actually pretty funny. I thought, I thought you were reading with us, Joe. Left to right, left to right, top to bottom. Group words together in a sentence.
Nope, wasn't paying attention. I zoned out, apparently.
Okay, well, go for it. Go ahead. I mean, if you want to scroll back up and you want to cheat, that's fine. But, they just gave you the answer. Is it Pope and Pulaski, Washington and Benton, Pope and Jefferson? We've already, listen, in case you don't know, this sound, you're out of time. We already took like a minute.
Me, real quick, where's Washington County?
It's Fayetteville. We're in northwest Arkansas.
And Benton's up there as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, it's not that one. Pretty sure it's Pope and Jefferson.
Okay, you're going with C, Pope and Jefferson.
Again, reminder, where's Jefferson County?
Jefferson County is it's southeast of Little Rock.
Yeah. Going Pope and Jefferson.
All right, question number 2. Would issue 4 affect current gambling at Oaklawn in Hot Springs and or Southland Racing in West Memphis? No, issue 4 would not affect these current gambling establishments, or yes. Issue 4 would allow for expanded gaming at these locations and would also see higher purse prizes available for racing games.
The answer to this question is yes.
Okay, question number 3. What percentage of the tax proceeds from casinos would go to the counties where the casinos are located? 4% each of the tax proceeds, total of 8% to counties, or 8% each of the tax proceeds, a total of 16% to the counties. What do you think, Joe? You need some music to help you with this one?
No.
You need to relax. Just chill out and relax. There we go. Nothing like some game show music on a Monday morning drive. Am I right, folks?
So I'm assuming this is
10 seconds.
Hold on. I'm assuming it says a total of 8% to the counties. I'm assuming that's
5 seconds.
4 and 4 for each county.
I can't give you any help. This is a standardized test.
Well, that's never been the practice of this show before.
The rules change. I'm a Democrat. All right, so 8%. You're going with
if it wasn't for double standards, there'd be no standards.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. That's what Democrats do. Progressives do. They have to have double standards. What percentage of the tax proceeds from casinos would go to state general revenue? 25%, 33%, or 55%?
Just going to go 25%.
25%?
Well,
question number 5.
I think 50, because in general, I think 55% is too high, even though that's my usual strategy is go with the highest number. I think it's too high. That just seems absurd. Some people aren't that dumb. Like, the people doing the casinos aren't dumb enough to give
all their profits away.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to negotiate for something lower, which is probably 25%.
Well, this was crafted by gambling interests, you know, so that's a good deduction to make. Question number 5, at what rate would the first $150 million in casino revenue be taxed? 5%, 10%, 13%?
Thought I heard 13%. I'm pretty sure
All right.
I heard 13%.
He's going with 13%. If you haven't already subscribed to receive emails from Conduit, you can put your email address in there. It's not shared with third parties or anything like that. And what town do you live? And go ahead. And what do we have, Joe? What was your score? Let's see. As the computer. Oh. Sorry. You got a D on this one. 60%.
Yeah, because I missed 2 questions.
You haven't. Hey, that's how quizzes
work.
That's
are they
how
legitimately dumb enough to give?
That's how quizzes work,
Oh,
Joe.
that's not how I read that question. That's my fault. 4 is my own fault.
So you missed, which one did you miss? You missed question 3.
3 and 4.
What percentage of the tax proceeds from the casinos would go to counties where the casinos are located? You marked 8%. It is actually only 4%. Sorry. And you have number 4 here. What percentage of the tax proceeds from casinos would go to state general revenue? You marked 25%. The correct answer would be 55%.
Yeah, I read that question entirely wrong.
I thought your logic was sound.
Well,
I probably would have missed that one as well.
So the way I would have
gotten the other one right.
The way I read 4, which may be the way you've read it, was so basically how much is the casino giving up to go to taxes? That's not the question. The question is being asked how much of the taxes being taken from casinos are going to general revenue.
Yeah. I agree. I was in error there as well. So, folks, it's issue number 4. It's casinos. It's essentially going to put in our Constitution the right to have a casino in specific counties. It's not a free market approach for sure, but I tell you this much: it is a government. It will officially be a government-sanctioned vice, much like the scholarship lottery, that only gives whopping, what is it? Is it less than 12% of the scholarship lottery actually goes to scholarships? I mean, it's come on. I mean. I don't agree with, if you want to open a casino, sure. I do think you should be able to do that in some capacity, but when you're going to put it into our Constitution, it just seems strange, seems odd. Of course, the government types want it because they want more and more revenue, but it is a vice. There's no question it's a vice. Matter of fact, if you talk to people who look into this stuff, they'll tell you that gambling is actually the fastest growing addiction in the country. It outpaces all of the substances that you hear most about. But nobody talks about gambling because it's such a lucrative thing for the government, tax revenue, things like that. Of course, now sports betting is going to be legal in all 50 states if the states, will pass laws allowing that. So we have that to worry about. Listen, I think. I'm just talking about in terms of society, we have that to worry about. But issue 4, casinos in Arkansas, I mean, you decide. I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be people, I think there's going to be people that are going to vote for this thing, that they would like to go, on a short drive in the state of Arkansas, go to a casino. I think that, and that's the whole thing, is you're going to have 4 casinos spread out kind of equally across the state. Because if you add one in Pope and you add one in Jefferson and you've got one in West Memphis and you've got one in Hot Springs, well, now you have 4 casinos in basically 4 corners of the state, if you will. Anyway, we'll see what happens with it. The phone number 870-275-9799. And by the way, if you go to conduitnews.com and you click on the Conduit quiz, there is a video a link there of me explaining all 4 of these ballot issues. I'm sorry, all 5 of the ballot issues. If you want more information on that, you can go and you can recap that. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with the Media Equalizer editor, media analyst. We have Brian Maloney back on the program. Want to talk all things Brett Kavanaugh and everything we've experienced over the last 2 weeks. There is a lot of enthusiasm out there right now. I think we're living in interesting times. We're going to take a break. Joe, thank you so much for doing the quiz, sir. Sorry it didn't work out for you, but we're going to take a break, reset, come back here in just a moment.
Responsibility to go around setting up GoFundMe accounts for legislators that need money. Okay, I didn't do that. I didn't know that was my responsibility, but that's what Bart Hester has been doing. And, where do we go? with these guys sitting there running around, and I'm not, like I said, I am not mocking somebody down on hard times. I've been there before, and I've needed help, and I've had people help me before, okay? And I'm not talking about, we're not talking about $100 a year or $200 a year. We're talking thousands of dollars, okay? Thousands of dollars. And you have Jake Files, who got a loan from a lobbyist, got another $80,000 we don't know anything about from some nursing home person, and now you have Bart Hester involved with arranging loans between legislators. So, and no more digging or questioning about it. Nothing at all.
Money, power, prestige, essence, available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism. The aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, it's 870-275-9799. That is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the program. Have you heard about the I know we spent most of last week talking about Brett Kavanaugh and the Supreme Court. Well, in doing all of that, a lot of there was news about our own Supreme Court. Okay, that is essentially kind of fallen through the cracks here. The Arkansas Supreme Court, we have all seven. This is just a crazy story. We have all seven of the Arkansas Supreme Court justices having ethics complaints filed against them. And this has to do with a lower court judge, Wendell Griffin. Okay, you see, Judge Wendell Griffin, back when Arkansas was going through their death penalty crisis and we were trying to put some people to death, and we had bought this drug, and wouldn't you know it, people said that the drug was painful or whatever, and so then there was all these court challenges. You can't use this drug because, if you're going to kill somebody, it's got to be done in a more humane way. At least that was their argument. And so anyway, Wendell Griffin, instead of even debating one way, he just goes out and he participates in a anti-death penalty, meaning an anti-death penalty protest. He just participates in it by doing some sort of realism, naturalism, art. I mean, essentially it was a form of theater where he sits on a bed a cot, and he acted like he was a corpse. And of course, this got people upset because they thought, well, okay, here's an example of a judge showing that it's gonna be difficult for him to rule on death penalty cases if he's admitting he doesn't believe in the death penalty at all. So now we have 7 members of the Supreme Court of Arkansas have been handed a complaint based on a complaint filed by Judge Wendell Griffin, whom the state Supreme Court stripped of his ability to handle death penalty cases. So the state Supreme Court said, you can no longer handle death penalty cases. And so now we have 7 Supreme Court justices, all 7 of them here in Arkansas, have this complaint filed against him. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette reports the case is the latest involving dueling complaints stemming from Griffin's decision to attend a Good Friday protest against the death penalty in April 2017, just hours after he issued a ruling that threatened to halt a series of executions. I mean, you obviously see the problem with this, right? I think we would all see the problem with that. The filing of the ethics complaint against the 7th Justice, Justice Womack, prompted the justice to file a 3rd ethics complaint, this one against Circuit Judge David Guthrie of El Dorado, whom Womack said had tainted the investigation against himself and other justices. Griffin, who is facing formal ethics charges for his actions, alleged that the Supreme Court never gave him a proper chance to defend himself before the justices acted to bar him from hearing death penalty cases. So this is just so strange. Such a strange. I would look for the legislature to get involved here in some capacity. A lot of people are telegraphing that the Arkansas General Assembly, specifically Senator Trent Garner and Judge Wendell Griffin, are essentially going to have a throwdown. No pun intended, like a death match. It seems. I mean, that's what the word on the street is. They're talking about some sort of way to impeach Judge Wendell Griffin. And I'm telling you, I think something in the General Assembly coming up this January, something is going to be done about this. There will be an attempt, some sort of attempt, to do this. One of Wendell Griffin's most outspoken critics is Senator Trent Garner. And so we'll be waiting to see what happens with all of that. Did you hear what Asa Hutchinson said? Apparently there was a debate between Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson, Mark West, and Jared Henderson, And they were talking about corruption. They were talking about ethics. And one of Asa's ideas that he wants to see is he wants to end the ability of one entity being able to give to multiple political action committees that they control and own. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. That is extremely interesting. If that were the case, it would really upend how Little Rock works. The Conduit for Commerce Follow the Money report is very valuable here if you haven't seen it yet. It highlights in Republican primaries who the kingmakers are and, contrary to establishment rhetoric, who the kingmakers are not. And it's pretty fascinating stuff here. And I just wonder if the governor really actually knows what he's saying there. Because what he is saying is you would basically be completely changing the rules. Here's the thing. The reason why political action committees are the only way to really participate in Arkansas politics in any coordinated way is because of convicted felon John Woods. You see, in the past, small business owners could give $2,000 per election to a candidate of their choice. Now small business owners may not do that, meaning mom and pop shops may not do that. The only way a business can contribute to politics is if the business gives money to a political action committee, which, by the way, was a Johnny Sweep-the-Legs move, because how many mom and pop businesses do you know that know which political action committee they would want to give their money to support a cause or support, not many. So it basically, businesses like Walmart and these big corporations, they were already using political action committees to donate to candidates and things like that. Your mom and pops, your average people who could say, you know what, I don't like this incumbent, and so I've got a business, and so I'm going to give you $4,000 over 2 elections. I got my buddy, he's going to give you $4,000. All of a sudden, you start getting money and you can compete. Well, now we've moved to basically a political action-funded political process, and, we see what the results are. Senator Brian King is with us from District 5. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Paul.
Can I have a loan? Is that something that you think you can give me, like a zero payment? I don't want any interest either, by the way.
Yeah, and first, Paul, I want to say when we're talking about the loan stuff, it's not that people think that when you get in the legislature and you're a public person, you're out there and everything you do, and sometimes I equate it to getting arrested. Everything you do and say can and will be used against you. But I've been on hard times in my life. Could be there again tomorrow. When it's not that we're mocking people on hard times. So when we're talking about the loan part, what we're talking about is the hypocrisy of these people. I mean, you sit here and you look at it, and I keep telling people, well, I go to the bank, but when I said earlier about legislators, it's like real life doesn't insulate you, or being elected doesn't insulate you from real life problems and issues and mistakes and screw-ups and bad judgments once you're in the legislature, but you're a public person, and all those things can be a pinata when those things happen to you the same way it can happen to you in real life. But the difference is the hypocrisy of these people. And I sit there and tell people now, I said, I just have operated in real life the same way I do down there in the legislature, in that when I need money, I go to the bank, okay? And if you're down there to the point that you're having to borrow money off friends and things like that, you don't need to be down there managing a $25 billion budget. And yet these people just continue to just say, and the media, they come out with enough that just throws a tidbit at that shows that, hey, we're trying to do something, but they're not digging. And that's why we've got the problem that we are. And these little stories are they're just minor things that's blowing up over the surface. And you sit there and think, I didn't know, or you could, we knew it was going on. It's been talked about. This news story wasn't anything new. They just finally had to report on something to actually make it seem like they had to do something. This has been going on for a while. But, Paul, here's the thing. Okay. I got a confession.
Okay.
All right, I got a confession. We sit here at the farm or in business, and you buy something and you think, no interest loan. No, probably this, well.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, hey, welcome back to the program. Joining us now, going to do a recap of really everything that's happened over the last 2 weeks. We have from the Media Equality Project, MediaEqualizer.com. Brian Maloney is back with us. Brian, welcome back, sir.
Hey, great to be back.
Yeah, so talk about this. I mean, it was an amazing weekend. With Friday, we had the Susan Collins speech. Saturday, we had the confirmation. Then you have the meltdown of the left. What are your thoughts generally about what happened the last 2 weeks?
Well, I think what is remarkable is that it has been the moderates within the Republican Party, like Susan Collins, who generally sided with the left on more issues than not, that came through and rescued Kavanaugh. So I think that just shows how far off the deep end that the left has gone.
I agree. And I was talking about this last hour. It's interesting. You've got these what we used to call rhinos, and maybe maybe they still are. I don't know. But Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Susan Collins. if it wasn't for President Trump, I just don't think they would have the courage and the boldness to do what they're doing. I think they feel a little bit more free to actually govern the way they claim to believe, because Donald Trump has been so successful by not marching to the beat that the media demands everybody dance to.
Well, I think this is incredible because I don't think, these people like Lindsey Graham or Susan Collins were at all supporters of Trump in any way, shape, or form. So between the radical left going completely off the deep end and I think Trump showing a consistent pattern of outsmarting his opponents and out-strategizing them, inevitably people fall in line, even people who never thought they would have supported Trump. I've seen a lot of people on social media over the last few days say, who weren't Trump supporters, say, wow, I'm starting to see the wisdom in this. I'm starting to see why this works. And I think that's where, look, the tracking poll now, Rasmussen's showing Trump at 51% approval. And I think to some extent, success is popular. I think that people see that and they realize, boy, maybe this isn't so bad. So things are really shifting in Trump's favor, but it is his ability to continually outsmart his opponents that draws support. It is remarkable to observe.
Yeah, it really is. And you have the media, you have the leftists out there. They're setting these traps, these nets, and they fall into them themselves. I've noticed that is a pattern of repeatedly. And I think here the biggest takeaway is you've got the voter enthusiasm polls. You now have the Republicans matching the Democrats in voter enthusiasm because the left is so insane. I've got stories of professionals at workplaces where you've got a room of 15 people, you've got some Republicans, some Democrats, some moderates. They were all so upset, so outraged by all of this that they both say for the first time in their lives they're going to vote Republican straight down the ticket just to prove a point. Do you buy the mainstream hype that, hey, there is going to be this blue wave, they are going to take back the House? I saw one poll saying 80% chance they take back the House, the Democrats. I just don't buy that. I don't feel that. Now, I may be in a political bubble, Brian, but I just sense that popular opinion right now is with continuing this Make America Great Again agenda.
Well, I think you're right in terms of this blue wave. I think they would have had the blue wave if not for overplaying their hand against Kavanaugh. I think that they would have easily retaken the House with a pretty good margin. The Senate, I think, was always kind of a long shot, but they could have at least had a 50-50 Senate. Now I think that we actually pick up one or two seats in the Senate. I've been watching the race very, very closely. I watch each poll as it comes in. I'm watching everything. The House, I'm still not 100% sure about, but I think we've got a shot at keeping it now. The Senate, I think we've got. So the bottom line is that the Republicans can at least keep one chamber. Trump will not face a completely hostile Congress. And, the bottom line is it comes down to, in the House, some of these contests in California that are harder to kind of sort out. And so there have been, some Republican House members in California that have been badly endangered. And we just need to see a few more polls to know what's going on there. But I think in the rest of the country, some races have absolutely shifted in our favor.
Yeah. What happens if you see, you got the national polls. Last year you have a African-American support of President Trump at 15%. Now, according to one poll, it's as high as 30%. If that trend actually translates into votes, I think the Democrats are in trouble in these House races.
Absolutely, and especially if turnout surges. And I don't know why we had this enthusiasm gap on our side before. I really don't know what that, other than maybe the media beating down Trump all the time. One of the huge errors that the left made here was in shifting the focus away from Trump and on to Kavanaugh, because it gave Trump actually a ton of political cover. They haven't been bashing Trump for the last month very much, and I think that has benefited him enormously, just having the spotlight taken off of him. It's incredible. I don't think I've ever seen a party make more dumb mistakes in 1 month than the Democrats have going in this election. It's downright shocking.
And I think that's because, Brian, they don't get legislative victories very often because, they're socialists. So they have to have the court expand the power of government here in America. And I think that's why they were in meltdown mode. They understand, listen, this is going to be now a solid 5-4 conservative court. and that's why they're willing. Of course, like you said, they overplayed their hand.
Well, I think also their dirty tricks have worked a lot better in the past than they did this time. And I think, they just calculated poorly and they strategized this badly. I think that's the difference. In the past, their October surprises worked. I don't think they're done yet. I think they'll try to pull something else, but I think a lot of political capital here has been wasted.
They're going to have a narrative shift. You're right. I agree with you. This week sometime, a new Trump attack. I think now is the time to declassify the FISA application. I look for I would be watching Devin Nunes and kind of hearing, trying to watch what he says. I think he's going to telegraph this, but I think now's the time to do it because, when we really find out what the deep state was doing, I think, that's going to, get even more support for saying, hey, we just can't reward this type of behavior. Trying to weaponize the United States government against political candidates. I mean, nobody's comfortable with that. Brian Maloney, I'll give you the last word, sir, on everything in the last 2 weeks.
Well, sure. And what I would say to follow up on that is that Trump should take this opportunity to make any moves that he'd been hesitating to make before the Kavanaugh nomination going into the election. He has the kind of political wind at his back at this point. And I think this would be the time to make a lot of moves. And so I think, this is an amazing, remarkable time in America's history. But we've got to follow through and vote. I mean, that is the bottom line. We've got to get active in these races. We've got a lot of work to do over the next month. So let's hope that people stick with this and realize what's at stake.
Media and political analyst, excellent analysis, Brian Maloney. The website is mediaequalizer.com. You have a great week, Brian. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you. You too.
All righty. Folks, we're going to take a break here. We're going to reset, come back, get to some more news of the day. Tell me what you think. Feel free, give us a phone call. What do you think about the last 2 weeks in Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation? 870-275-9799.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Senator Brian King is with us from District 5. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Paul.
Can I have a loan? Is that something that you think you can give me, like a zero payment? I don't want any interest either, by the way.
Yeah, and first, Paul, I want to say when we're talking about the loan stuff, it's not that people think that when you get in the legislature and you're a public person, you're out there and everything you do, and sometimes I equate it to, getting arrested. Everything you do and say can and will be used against you. But, I've been on hard times in my life. Could be there again tomorrow. When it's not that, we're mocking people on hard times. So when we're talking about the loan part, what we're talking about is the hypocrisy of these people. I mean, you sit here and you look at it, and I keep telling people, well, I go to the bank.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. We're in the home stretch here. And by the way, you can text us. Actually, sound off over at the Facebook page, facebook.com/conduitnews, or the YouTube page. People on Facebook talking about the mob rule, and that's really what we've experienced the last 2 weeks is the mob rule. Hey, you know what? I still stand by, this whole thing is a Dianne Feinstein, or is orchestrated by Dianne Feinstein. I don't care who you are, her office, her personally. It's orchestrated by Dianne Feinstein. And do you know who wants to give Donald Trump a loss even more than crazy leftists? You know who wants to give Donald Trump a loss more domestically? China. That's right, China. China wants to give President Trump a domestic loss more than anything. That's why they are targeting districts, agricultural areas that he won, with their tariffs and the responses and everything else, and the trade war that we're in right now with China. It is China, and Dianne Feinstein, from what it looks like, is a Chinese spy. Dianne Feinstein appears to be a Chinese agent. She made all of her money with Chinese deals. Her husband, you got to look into that situation. Her rise to political power followed a Chinese mayor. They kind of basically went up the ranks together, and it just so happens that she didn't know that for 20 years, one of her employees in her office is a Chinese agent. She didn't know that was the case, though. Didn't know at all. So, what's the deal here? I just, if the Democrats just going to throw out allegations, as I said a couple of weeks ago, why not just say, well, this is really just a Chinese plot? This whole Kavanaugh thing with Blasey Ford, Julie Swetnick, it's all just them trying to give Trump a loss. Of course, it didn't work out too well, did it? If that's the case. Now, listen, I know it's a far-fetched thing. I'm just making a point here. I will tell you this. China certainly is a threat. We have this report that Bloomberg ran. They published what is called, according to Fortune.com, a nuclear warhead-tipped report on Thursday alleging that Chinese military operatives have engaged in an unprecedented espionage campaign, planting minuscule spy chips on server motherboards that wound up inside almost 30 companies ranging from Apple to Amazon. While squishy on technical details, the magazine claimed that members of the People's Liberation Army snuck rice grain-sized microchips into these IT infrastructure components during the manufacturing process, and the spies thereby gained, effectively, godlike powers over the machines. There's just one hitch. Just about every named organization has rejected the report. Really? That's the hitch? That Amazon and Apple don't want to admit that the Chinese have godlike powers over the devices they're selling Americans? That's really the hitch? Of course they're going to deny it. Now, DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, if you go over to foxnews.com, they're reporting that the Department of Homeland Security said over the weekend that it had no reason to doubt denials from Apple and Amazon of the report that Chinese spies placed surveillance chips in their server hardware. It should be pretty easy to determine, shouldn't it? Or it should be pretty easy to disprove, right? If it's a rice grain size, just crack that sucker open and take a look. It should be very easy to figure out. Grain of rice is really actually not that small, in my opinion, when you think about the components inside, a computer or a motherboard or a cell phone or whatever. Do you understand, if it is true, how absolutely earth-shattering this would be, that we're all carrying around phones where the Chinese are spying on us? Do you understand how absolutely earth-shattering that would be for these companies like Amazon that are now wanting you to put speakers in your home that are basically listening to you 24/7? It would be such a huge invasion of privacy. There is no lawsuit. There is no way to. It would be unquantifiable, the class action lawsuit that would be coming. It would be incredible. So yeah, it certainly is a big deal. The allegation is a huge deal, of course. But everybody's denying it. Yeah. You mean like James Clapper denied that the U.S. government doesn't spy on American citizens? Oh, yeah. He denied it. It's not true. Well, then he was found out to be a liar. I mean, the documents, Edwards noted, he was a complete liar. Talk about perjury. No one has ever charged him for perjury, as he should be. He should be in jail, James Clapper. I don't know, folks. I think the Chinese are some bad actors here. What do you think? Are we surprised? They're over there manufacturing this stuff in American factories, but they're in China. I mean, I've heard stories of Americans having factories in China, and then one day they wake up and, I don't have my factory anymore. Well, guess what? Because you're living in the factory's located in a communist Chinese country. And, of course, here in Arkansas, we want the communist Chinese to come here. Governor Asa Hutchinson wants the communist Chinese to come here. Come here, please. Let us give you our taxpayer money so that you will, quote, invest money here. You will create jobs. Please, come here, take our resources, go back home. Why is it China, though? Why China? Anybody wonder why China? Oh, and at this point, knowing what President Trump's agenda is, why, and this is the big news, why are the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, according to a Wesley Brown Talk Business and Politics article from September 18th, why are they still engaged with these Chinese companies amid the tariff war? Why is it still happening? Arkansas Economic Development officials are still engaged in talks with Chinese officials to bring 2 major durable goods projects to Arkansas. My question is why, in light of the fact that we are in a trade war with China, why would any administration, especially a Republican one, continue to try to do business with the Chinese when we're in the trade deal with them? It doesn't make sense.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parrot.
Yeah, so we have some little news interruption there. It's just crazy. Wow, did you hear what he said? Oh, folks, this broadcast is available over at conduitnews.com if you want more shows like this. Hey, if you want our smaller videos and other uploads, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to Conduit News. Click the little bell to receive notifications. It would really help us out. We really do appreciate all of you out there. Listen, we cannot do the show without you. Yeah, Dennis says still looking for this parody on YouTube, not finding it. Well, we're going to remedy that. That is coming shortly. Okay, so stay tuned. If you want that particular Paul Harrell parody, stay tuned. We'll be uploading it shortly. Okay. Actually, Joe was just playing it from a different system. It's not even in the current system it's supposed to be in, so we got to do a little work on that. There, it's pretty kind of fresh. So we did play it on Friday though. All right, folks, I hope you listening right now, I hope you have a great week. I hope you have a great Monday. And thank you for starting it with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Well, we don't want to just talk about conservative ideas. We actually want to see it implemented. What a 2-week period it's been. The Democrats have overplayed their hand, and I'm sure you'll hear more about it on great stations like you're listening to right now. Arkansas, be safe.